Greetings, brothers and sisters. Bob Saget died from a head trauma, family says. Now listen to this. Bob Saget was found dead in his Orlando, Florida hotel room last month. Died from the result of a head trauma, according to a statement from his family. Authorities have determined that Bob passed away from head trauma. They have concluded that he accidentally hit the back of his head on something, thought nothing of it, and went to sleep. The statement said no drugs or alcohol were involved. Okay, well, like that would be an excuse if he did something this stupid, like he hit his head that hard. And listen to what Sanjay Gupta is going to have to say in a second, right? I mean, this is their, schmaltzy BS stuff. As we continue to mourn together, we ask everyone to remember the love and laughter that Bob brought to this world and the lessons he taught us all, to be kind to everyone, to let the people you love know you love them, and to face difficult times with hugs and laughter. We already know that that's BS because John Stamos said the last time he saw Bob Saget, he was actually listening to him, was interested in what he had to say, and wasn't interrupting him. And he said it was the Bob I wish we always had because, Bob wasn't as kind as they said he was. But to hit your head that hard, like I've had a concussion, right? I fell off a zip line when I was 14 years old. I fell about 25, 30 feet, hit my head on a rock, and spent 12 hours in the hospital, right? I mean, I don't remember, it was a couple of days were hazy, and my brain wasn't bleeding. This is what Sanjay Gupta had to say about it.
What do you look for? And you mentioned the idea of a slurred speech. You mentioned the idea of feeling confusion. Is there a certain window of time? I know if you have a stroke, there's sort of read the signs and there's a window of opportunity.
Because people bump their heads all the time and die, right? They're making it sound like, hey, I bumped my head. I wonder if I'm going to die in my sleep tonight. No, this isn't factually accurate, right?
Blood thinners are supposed to be provided in some way to give you a chance for survival. Is there a window in which you need to get to the hospital if you're feeling this way?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this is these bleeds, which are on top of the brain, typically, if that's what he suffered from, which it sounds like, if you get to the hospital quickly within, with stroke, it's really within 3 hours. With this sort of thing, you have to think about getting there as quickly as you can as well. If you can take the pressure off of the brain, and simply by removing some bone, removing this blood collection, take that pressure off the brain as quickly as possible, you greatly increase the chances of survival. I mean, it's just as simple as that. It's just basically, it's a pressure issue at that point. Again, the brain has nowhere to go.
See, what they're saying is he hit his head so hard, his brain made contact with the inside of his skull. It caused a brain bleed, right? His brain was bleeding, and it filled up, and the pressure caused his death. So the guy hit his head so hard, it caused his brain to bleed, right? Like, that's what they're saying. And he said, oh, it's no big deal. I bumped my head. I'm going to sleep. And he never woke up.
Because it's encased by bone. So, I think the message is, again, I don't want to frighten people, and people do bump their heads all the time, and it turns out to be nothing.
Okay, so first of all, you are scaring people all the time. Like, that's what you do. That's what you've been doing for the past 2 years, and it's part of your medical model. I don't want to scare anybody. That's your job. And the second part where he says people bump their heads all the time and they don't die, right? We'll come back to that.
But if it's a severe blow to the head, if you have some of these symptoms, again, I'll just say, worsening headache, confusion, nausea, vomiting, slurring of speech, anything else that's just unusual like that, if you're on blood thinners, and especially if you're an older person, those really do increase your chance of developing something like this. Again, it's not common. I don't want to unnecessarily frighten people, but those are some indicators, some clues that you should get this checked out.
The key is a severe blow to the head. We don't know if Bob Saget was on blood thinners yet. Maybe they've talked about it. Maybe they haven't. And so that might explain, it's still going to have to be something that your brain makes contact with the inside of your skull. So if you're on blood thinners, you might bleed more easily. But he bumped his head, right? And he said, severe. I mean, you need a severe crack to the head. Like you saw this woman pass out today on my other YouTube channel, this comedian. You can see her head bounce off the stage. You see it in basketball all the time. A player is falling backwards. Their body hits the ground first, and their head whiplashes down. You see it in football as well, and bangs into the, into the turf or into the, on the floor, the court in a basketball court, right? And those are the kind of things, or really getting a severe hit to the head that cause, concussions, where he says you're vomiting. But like I said, I fell from 25 feet and I didn't have any brain bleeding, right? I understand they have to check those things out, but it's very rare. Like it's what he said, it's rare. It's something that's hard to believe, right? He bumped his head. Plus, Bob Saget's the kind of guy who's always talking about himself. He's self-obsessed. If he hit his head hard enough to have something like this happen, you think he would tell his wife or something, say, yeah, I hit my head? Or, he's just one of those people. He's like neurotic and, self-obsessed, like I said. And so it just doesn't sound believable, right? Like, what did he bump his head on? Did he fall in the shower? Like, that would be pretty severe. Something like that. And why did it take them a month to figure out what he died from? Because if he hit his head that hard, there'd be a huge lump on his head, right? Like if it, hit his head so hard that it caused his brain to bleed and that, he went to sleep and never woke up, there'd be a massive knot on his head. I mean, they found him in the next morning. It took him a month to figure out, hey, that knot on his head must mean something. And if he did have a knot on his head that big, wouldn't they say, hey, maybe there was foul play? Maybe someone came in and cracked him on the head. And isn't that still a possibility, right? They're saying he fell and then, we bumped his head or whatever. We don't know on what or how it happened, but there's no foul play. Like someone could have got a key card, got into his room, cracked him on the head. I mean, that's, another explanation, right? But they're saying, no, there's no foul play. Even though he had a massive lump on his head. And they're saying he's like, so oblivious. He banged his head so hard that it caused his brain to bleed. He thought nothing of it, went to bed and never woke up, right? I mean, the whole thing's just, come on. Just like with everything Bob Saget, it's unsatisfying and, what? Like, it's confusing. This is so Saget, right? This is classic Saget. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.